I've been using my Ford Transit now for 3 years, and I wanted to share my lessons learned. But first off, let's talk about the van. So my van is a medium roof, 148-inch wheelbase Ford Transit. If I was taller, maybe the high roof would be better. But with the mid roof, I can stand fully upright, and so can Alicia. Alternatively, a high roof would certainly provide greater headroom inside the bed, which is a little bit cramped. But I've had many times when I've been on very windy highways and windy roads where the lateral sway of the van is noticeable. A taller van would be even more unnerving. The 148-inch wheelbase is still more drivable and parkable than the extended wheelbase. As for accessories, I have the all-wheel drive. I have definitely taken full advantage of this feature, climbing some pretty steep, bumpy, narrow forestry and mining roads sufficiently off the main highways. For the engine, I have the 3.5-liter EcoBoost V6 engine, which is more than ample power to pull this fully loaded vehicle up some pretty steep and extended mountain climbs, as well as easily pass long tractor-trailers on high-speed highways. Sure, it uses slightly more gas, but the peace of mind this engine provides is worth it. I'm also very glad that I ordered the larger alternator for this van. It gives me comfort that the alternator can handle the additional load to charge my lithium battery while I'm driving. I also ordered the stock swivel seats, and this is one of the things I would change. The stock swivel seats provided by Ford are quite uncomfortable and don't provide proper lumbar support, so are quite uncomfortable and fatiguing on long drives. So for the van usage plan, before you custom build a camper van, you need to answer a few key questions. How and when will you use it? And will you need heat, hot water, and air conditioning? While I talked about my design criteria in earlier videos, as a refresher, I designed my van for a minimalist usage over 3 seasons, that being the spring, summer, and autumn. I was not looking for a home away from home, but rather a big upgrade from the wilderness tent camping that I'd been doing previously. And I was definitely planning some serious off-roading with the all-wheel drive. During the autumn and spring times of the year, I typically travel to southern United States and possibly Mexico, and I travel primarily within British Columbia or more northern United States during the summer. I did not contemplate using my van for ski or winter trips where the temperatures will be sub-freezing for extended periods, and I did not contemplate needing air conditioning very often during the summer. Air conditioning I considered a luxury, for which cost and space requirements must be fully considered. And the cost is not just the air conditioning appliance, but even more for the additional solar or recharge and battery storage capacity. A rough estimate for adding air conditioning has it as much as 40 to 60% more than my entire material costs. And for propane, I didn't want to cannibalize the van interior space to house a 25-pound propane tank or cut into the van wall or the floor to accommodate propane. So I decided upon a minimalist van design, thinking that I would not need the heat or air conditioning very often, or at least sufficiently to justify the additional costs, complexity, and interior space requirements. For electricity, I designed my van to be simple and modest, hence the attractiveness of a plug-and-play lithium battery station, such as the Blue Eddy 200P. So let's now talk about some of the specific components of the van build. For flooring, I would glue the half-inch layer of the microcell foam floor insulation directly to the half-inch plywood flooring. This would ensure the microcell foam was completely flat against the plywood floor layer. For the bed and garage structure, I would frame the bed structure instead of using the 3/4-inch plywood walls to support the bed platform. This would save on weight and material cost for the overall structure. And for the bed support cross members, which are supported by 2 half walls within the bed garage structure, I would use 2x2 SPF lumber rather than the very hard to drill 2x2 oak supports. And for the lower storage cabinets, I would build the fridge, toilet, and drawer lower cabinets all in one section rather than 3 separate modules. That would save on weight and build time. I would also ensure large vents in the fridge cabinet section. I had to go back in and expand my initial vent cutout size. The fridge manufacturer recommends a 30 square inch vent, but I think it could be even more. I would raise the height of the top of the cabinets by maybe 1 inch to facilitate a greater front vent for the fridge. Also, make sure to build the fridge cabinet at the end of the cabinet bank. I originally put it in the middle of 3 modules and it didn't sufficiently vent. And for the countertop, I used one from IKEA. I would not do this again. It was too heavy and expensive for what I got. I also had to refinish it since the laminate was not properly sealed. I would probably just use a 1 inch plywood or hardwood or something like that and properly seal it. When I'm boondocking, I occasionally have to deploy my portable solar panels, and so it's a really simple fix. I chose not to put solar panels on the roof because I don't really need solar panels all that frequently, and in a pinch, when I do need them, and I have some solar panels that I can readily deploy. For the sink cabinet, I would pre-install the water pump and all the related sink plumbing on a wooden template to attach to the rear of the cabinet. This would facilitate easy pump removal and repair. I would also reorient the plumbing more efficiently to add a small drawer with the otherwise unused space. I would also consider whether to add a small instant hot water tank. The cost and/or size constraints of hot water will be a factor. The cost is not just for the tank, but also the incremental electrical load. These refinements may require the sink cabinet to be slightly larger or wider. For the walls and ceilings, I would use cedar shiplap rather than the knotty pine, which I found to be quite rough. There was a lot of unusable shiplap, which was too holey, and the tongue and groove was cracked and damaged. For my electrical design, I only designed this system for a fridge, a water pump, lights, a phone, and a camera recharged outlet. I did not think I wanted air conditioning, that there would be only a few days during the year which would be sufficiently hot enough to warrant air conditioning. I also recognized that the fridge was my biggest load, by far. Depending upon the ambient temperature, it might use 30 to 40% over a 12-hour period of the 2,048 watt-hours available battery capacity. I have since added an additional 12-volt DC port to occasionally use a heating blanket on cold evenings. And I typically only boondock off-grid for 2 and at most 3 days, so I only need 3 days of battery storage capacity. The 2,048 watt-hours of the Bluetti AC 200P lithium battery station seems to be sufficient. However, I would have a second look at not using the Bluetti power station. While having a plug-and-play system with 2,000 watt inverter and a solar charger is simple and has worked very well until now, I find the 2,048 watt-hours of electrical capacity is slightly too little. I would like to see more like 3,000 watt-hours of capacity. With my limited load, the 2,000 watt-hours gives me about 2 days of off-grid power without deploying solar or running the engine. However, there are a few situations where I would like to have a full third day of storage capacity. And now that I've hooked up the Bluetti power station to the customer connection port under my driver's seat, I'm able to recharge the Bluetti at a rate of about 560 watts, which will fully recharge the battery within a 4-hour drive. And many times on my long drives, I drive longer, and therefore could charge for longer than my battery would be able to store. It would be nice to take advantage of this potential charging time, which would also diminish my anxiety around having sufficient battery capacity. So I'm down in Phoenix, Arizona during March spring break, and I've deployed my solar panels for the first time. And so I got 3 120 watt portable panels off the back, and I've plugged it in series into the back of my power system back here. I can have either the car battery or the solar on from this connection here. For hot water, I've currently not considered using it. So for washing dishes, I use my propane stove. But I have an outside shower, which I use periodically, and which does not have hot water. Most of the time, when I have an outdoor shower, the ambient temperatures are sufficiently warm. But occasionally it isn't, and the backdoor shower is a little bit chilly. Having warm water on such days, even infrequently, would be great. For cooking, I use a Coleman propane stove. I use the stove inside the van with a Murphy stove type drop-down cabinet. This also gives me the flexibility of using it inside the van or moving it outside to a picnic table. This flexibility enables me to cook outside on hot days and inside when it's windy or rainy. And it doesn't require a second outside cook system like many RVs. But it's a bit cumbersome to deploy compared to the built-in induction stove. Unfortunately, the significant electrical system upgrade required to use an electrical stove drives the decision to use propane. And when I use my propane stove inside, and I always make sure I open the rooftop vent, which is really easy to deploy. I also don't have propane heat for the van, so it does get a little chilly during cold autumn and spring days, and at the higher elevations I periodically camp at. But I have a 12-volt DC heating blanket, and it solves the problem. For the clean water system, I have a wheel well molded 24-gallon clean water tank that provides about a week of water supply, which seems sufficient. For the grey water system, I'm comfortable using a 5-gallon jerry can under the sink. The garden hose quick release valve makes removal and reattachment of this tank very easy. However, I find that I need to dispose of the grey water nearly every 2 days, so it's a bit of a nuisance. But short of installing a much larger under-vehicle grey or black water tank, this is the best option. As previously mentioned, I really didn't want to cut into the van frame. I'm planning to keep this van for a very long time and very leery of leaks and rust. For a toilet, we use a cabinet-mounted Thetford porta-potty with an under-mounted removable cassette for disposal. And so now for other items. For laundry, I'm using an unused space under the garage, which I built after the fact. I built a laundry drawer that's easily accessible from inside the van, but it's also out of the way, and the laundry is removable from the rear doors. And for other ongoing considerations, I continue to evaluate the addition of an onboard shower, propane heat, and hot water. This is still an unresolved issue due to the considerable cost and space considerations, and the few times that I actually use them. Well, that now covers everything that I've encountered during the past 3 years, and we look forward to many more years of wilderness adventure travel. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.